Um, I will be very brief. The idea is very simple, and it comes from this team. To do something real instead of talking. And to do something real, we have the material here because we have some of the most interesting technologies in the critical areas for innovation. So we hope that the plan that I will explain will be brought back to you in a year from now so that you can evaluate the reality of what we're doing. And the plan consists of putting together, in a way that I won't describe now, to give a chance to the innovators who talk about their technology, and as I introduce them, I will explain how they fit together. And what I wanted to say that is very timely is that we're going to use a tried and true method of using world leaders as advisors to guide us and to help us succeed and bring something real to you, action, do it, in a year from now, here at AREI. And because of time issues, I would like, first of all, to mention that as an advisor on the area of national security, how these technologies can contribute to national security, the advisor that we have chosen, and you would not blame us for a second, it's an extraordinary choice, is General Clark. And I think he's about to leave for a call, so he agreed, but is he here now? Yes. So if you don't mind, just say 2 words, if you don't mind coming here, about what you haven't heard yet, but it's essentially the use of these technologies for producing, for taking CO2 from air, combining it with hydrogen to produce synthetic fuels from air and water, identical to gasoline, and increment the productivity of electricity, or even replace electricity in the ways that will be explained by the innovators in this panel, how that can contribute in a carbon negative way to national security.
Well, I think there are 2 or 3 different ways which the technologies you're describing can contribute. The first way, of course, is that the United States has, for a long time, been dependent on imported oil. So the Department of the Navy, in particular, has had an effort to find alternative sources of propulsion. So they funded biofuels at as expensive as $24, $25 a gallon. They've taken a lot of criticism from this, but the program continues, and they're searching for market fuels. Second way in which it's important is if we can, the holy grail really is to convert CO2 into something useful.
Yes.
Fuel, fertilizer, anything that has carbon in it, if you can use CO2, if you run it through algae, if you run it through some other kind of petrochemical process, there'll be many different pathways to this, but that's the holy grail. Obviously, that's big on environmental security, and that's part of national security. And then third, if we can use CO2 and really build a fuels network that makes us energy independent, that's huge for American prosperity and national security. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The second advisor I wanted to mention, that we have engaged, if you wish, is Michael Adams from NREL, the Department of Energy, who will advise us on the connection of what we are going to be doing that I just described, and how this can be brought into action with the help of the Department of Energy and NREL, and how we can bring that message to you in real terms, do it in a year from now. Where is Michael Adams?
Richard Adams.
I'm sorry, Richard Adams.
Hi, thank you.
Thank
Delighted
you.
to join this advisory board. I think this is a really exciting opportunity. I think one thing that a lot of people don't recognise about National Labs is that we are actually open for business, and this is an example of the way that we work with companies in industry, particularly startups, to help validate technology, bring the technologists together in a way that helps them understand from one another about how to develop those companies and grow those companies, and to support the mission of moving these technologies along the commercialization path. So I'm delighted to join this board, and I am looking forward to being part of the process that reports back to you in a year. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Graciela, thank you. So to everyone in the audience, this was definitely somewhat of a unique approach. We actually stated the big idea, and you had no idea really what was stated.
That's coming.
That is coming.
So let me introduce the other advisors first. So I just did it in one at a time because of the lack of time. Some of us had to leave. So the next one is, I don't see him here, but Michael Eckhart from Citi. Okay. Where are you? Oh, I'm sorry. My apologies. So, of course, an enterprise of this sort, which is, really coming from a general putting together of number of technologies, trying to do something real and bring it back to you in a year from now, and it will be explained in more detail by the innovators themselves later, will need advice on financing. And I can't, after talking this morning with him, I can't imagine a better person to give advice than Michael Eckhart on this. So I do understand we're asking you to talk about something that hasn't happened and may not happen, okay? We are hoping to do something real a year from now and to bring it to you. But we have to understand that there's always risk at stake. So we wanted to hear from Michael about it.
Very briefly, the thing we talked about is there's 3 to 5 very viable new technology companies in the sector that are going into commercialization now. There's a new industry forming, and over the next year, the financing will come into it.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And just to provide...
I think a manifesto that was provided for what it means in terms of values and in terms of the future, that was provided by John Perlin. John Perlin. I don't know if John Perlin is here. He was supposed to be here. Anyway, John Perlin, the author of Let It Shine, has agreed to take and distill from the discussions what he calls, and he suggested to be a manifesto. And the manifesto would be a better explanation than the one I can provide now to you. And he's a wonderful writer, about what we're trying to achieve in terms of doing something real, concrete, in all the directions I mentioned, national security, financing, and energy, etc., through AREDAY. And so AREDAY will become the vehicle for making something real that will be brought to you to determine whether we actually accomplish anything or not a year from now. The manifesto that John Perlin will produce. There is John. Yes, thank you. So the manifesto that he will produce will be presented, will be written by him, a wonderful author, and it will be presented, we hope, by Chip and by Sally to you before the end of the conference.
All of you here are invited to participate. It's about an open innovation forum. It's about bringing thought leadership that exists here in the room, organizations, and I see the Rocky Mountain Institute, and other organizations that have spent years on thinking through these issues and really getting out of the think tank and providing a platform for a do tank, call it a fab lab. All of those are buzzwords. What we're introducing here is the opportunity through AREDAY, and I can't overstate how much this organization and specifically Sally and Chip have done for the industry. We just want to create another level and be measured in the process. With that said, allow me to introduce as the first speaker, Chris Ledoux. Chris, could you describe in maybe 2 to 5 minutes what it is that your innovation is focused on in general terms, and what are you solving for?
Well, first of all, I'm a self-taught inventor. I have over 65 patents in various selected technologies. Right now, my focus is on dynamic spin solar systems. and it is an innovation that shrinks footprint, uses existing one-sun PV, and our experiments at this time using certain primitive materials is over 200% increase in power. It spins, it solves the heat problem, it changes the differential in how you manage heat, bring up the power in the photovoltaic material. We have moved away from the traditional flat panel circuitry design that is either parallel or series. What this system was inspired from radial engines, inspired from alternators and generators, and is dynamic. It puts out wattage per second as it rotates. Each piece of photovoltaic material is discrete state circuit, therefore it is switched and isolated. It has no negative current, it only produces power, and as it spins, it reduces heat. It doesn't require any other cooling or air, because the nature of the material is that as soon as you turn it out of the sunlight, it immediately cools. As it returns back, and like an engine, it goes to top dead center and pushes that photovoltaic material to its maximum electrical limit. At this point, using a rather primitive prototype, we have proven 200% improvement in power.
I had the opportunity to visit Chris's home, which is a ranch in Oregon. And unlike some of the other inventors, Chris, with 60 patents certainly, and having worked in technology over the past 30 years, has actually also had an exit. So you, maybe you can just briefly mention, you've innovated in other areas outside of clean tech, and what was the success there? Maybe just to...
Yes. Back in the 1990s, I invented a very simple system for mobile cellular communication networks, which resulted in the largest wireless data telematics telemetry network in the Western Hemisphere. It was deployed throughout every city in the United States and Canada, and it was used to sort of non-sexy innovations like tracking trucks and non-tethered trailers and security systems and whether or not it turns on your refrigerator or not. But it was deployed very quickly because it was a virtual solution. Other areas that I worked in are digital voice channels, taking a nonlinear channel with memory and innovating virtually that it would transport predictive data.
So with that said, and we've spent quite a bit of time with each one of these inventors, it's really the journey that we don't have enough time to describe today. If any one of them would have gone to a corporate research lab or a research lab, chances are they wouldn't have gotten an audience, they wouldn't have made it through the screening process and never been invited. What we've witnessed, and through our own resources and access within innovation labs, is quite a bit of surprise by what they claim to be able to do and what they then were able to prove. Thank you. The next innovator is Daniel Lang. Daniel, could you share, maybe same format, 2 to 5 minutes, what it is that your innovation is focused on and what are you looking to solve?
Sure. Okay. So my core technology, because it is quite large, is a method to harvest, store, transport thermal energy, whether it's from the sun, from industrial sources, and then convert on demand into thermoelectric energy. Highly efficient, using organic matter for the storage, so that you can actually take the heat of the day of the sun and actually make a larger amount of electricity during the nighttime because of the thermal difference. So you can store that heat during the day while you're making electrical energy, generating electricity on the transport. And when the night cools down, when that thermal energy is then released back through the transport out, and then is also generating electricity during that process. So and it doesn't have to be from the sun. That's just a very good way to offset, say, photovoltaics that has a night and day issue. This way you're actually getting the full period of people's lives and energy needs. thermal energy from industrial uses like power gen stations, very easy to capture and store and take the thermal differences and harvest electricity from those on demand. And being able to set the temperature differences is the biggest part of my patent that's been published through Jones Day worldwide. That we can store these energies from -40 C all the way up to 300 degrees C in 1 degree increments. Very precisely, we know the latent energy and the specific energy is very high content per gram, and with just off-the-shelf off-the-shelf thermoelectrics, not even advancing, which we also have technologies for the advancement of those, but just plain off-the-shelf components. We're producing very high rates of energy and bringing other technologies, making them more efficient because we're harvesting their heat. We're actually taking their problem and turning it into a benefit.
And I think that was the big surprise in looking or evaluating these technologies or solutions, is that none of them are defined by very complicated technologies or materials. In fact, they were all very basic and accessible and inexpensive. And I think that's important to recognize. You too have worked in other fields and certainly have inventions and IP that relates to other areas. Could you just briefly highlight what is your background and what other areas of research have you introduced?
I'm not your standard scientist per se. I designed my first building when I was 15. I'm self-taught. Owned my own architectural firm by the time I was 20 years old. I have over 400 buildings built on this planet. I've designed master planned cities and have work all over the world. I understand systems. And one thing I've learned during the 40 or 30 some, almost 40 years of architecture and land planning and civil engineering and structural engineering, that these systems need to work together. And that our methods of waste are mostly because of the segmentation of all the different fields. So it's given me a huge advantage from a systems point of view to be able to integrate different technologies that have kind of gone pushed to the side because they weren't efficient enough on their own. But then also from a standpoint of business, I've developed back in early 2000 internet broadband that I sold.
And you have an innovation with a light bulb that some would say is revolutionary.
We're launching this month. Yep, we're launching this month Bright Sol, which is a energy efficient light system that takes LEDs and puts it on a higher tier. We're looking at lighting that is about 10% of the energy needs. Because we don't have the heat issue, 10% of the energy needs of demand of, say, traditional lights, or only 25% of the best LEDs out there on the market. We're launching Bright Sol's first products September.
Perfect. Again, as Mo stated yesterday, the value of his innovation, again, is the ability to produce hydrogen on demand and locally. We talked about that yesterday. Again, just from our perspective and our process in identifying, who may fit into our strategy as an investor, and oftentimes it's not finance that these individuals seek. In fact, this leads me to the second question. All of you have or are defined really by a desire to change the planet and really make this place a better place to live. So you struggle, as you shared with us, between the ability to accept money from certain sources. At the same time, you haven't accepted it. So what is that dynamic, and why haven't you accepted certain types of financing, and what other than financing then do you require in order to launch? Chris, do you want to take the lead on this?
Yes, one of the things that I discovered coming from, in the beginning, a very naive place, that through the course of starting a number of companies, you cannot let the board control it, the innovation, because they have their own special interest. And the special interest has to do, if you develop up to a stage, in one of my companies, we had AT&T, Cantel on the board, we had Honeywell and other special interest members, and I had a whole string of technologies that would layer in network protocols and in user channels that would continue to increase and increase the value proposition in networks virtually. And the virtual way is, throughout the course of my work, my whole focus and agenda was to save networks, not throw out base sites and radios.
So there was a misalignment between your objectives
Yes.
as an innovator
Yes.
and obviously the necessity
Yes.
to fit into a process that was defined by the financing that you were that you did accept.
Worst thing you ever do is take money from AT&T, Cantel, and you know.
It's a different
But
path.
I mean it in the sense that they weren't negative, but they have their market perspective. They wanted to do things, and they didn't want to go past a certain technological level. So that stunted innovation in the company, and I ended up leaving in 1999 to seek out and to study other technologies that would be useful. I went to China in 1999, and I discovered at that moment that in Shanghai, they didn't have energy at their souks or their bazaars.
So the misalignment between your objectives
Yes.
and what money or
Yes.
a corporate entity is seeking basically slowed down your innovation. In fact, you sat on many patents that all had its place.
Yeah.
That never saw the daylight. Is
Yes.
that correct?
Yes.
And so, Daniel, you shared the same, and maybe you can provide that perspective, because you've had solutions that were viable 5 years ago, could
Yes.
have contributed to systems and certainly affected, the environment. So why is it that you haven't released your technologies or accepted venture capital or other financing?
I think, well, first of all, I can't blame the industry or the financial industries too much, because my wife and I decided to do things a little bit different. We actually took our patents and gifted them to humanity, which takes them out of the companies. And we did so through Cadwalader, which is the oldest law firm in the United States.
And by the way, may I ask, is that recognized by your accountant or by the IRS? Is there benefits?
Oh, it's actually cost Stacy and I our entire life's gift tax, because the value of we had to pay to gift it to humanity, or else the IRS would have charged us a huge tax. So we actually had to use our lifetime gift tax to gift it to these trusts that the Royal Bank of Canada now are trustees for. So that was kind of one block, because when you take funds from venture capital firms or other corporations, they kind of like the technology to be in the company they're investing in. Now, the companies that we've created, we have set up so that they have a perpetual worldwide license to that technology, and it's actually given us the ability to get angel investors. The other restriction, it's not really a restriction, problem we've seen is that when they see one of the technologies, say our heating and cooling technology, and it's all thermal energy, it's actually all energy, right? So whether I'm doing food growth or getting water out of the atmosphere, it's all based on the single patent. So of course they want to make the smallest investment in one company, say the lighting company, but they want to have a piece of every single thing down the road.
So you recognize the value that an investor brings, and Mr. Eckert, stick with us. It's going to come full circle. This is open innovation. So you recognize the value that the finance industry brings, incubators, accelerators,
Absolutely.
But it wasn't for you as an inventor. You
and
have a lab.
also didn't fit the model. We built this.
Meanwhile, all of us are not benefiting from innovation that resides in labs that could be freed up. So there is an opportunity for a different approach that marries your objectives and, quite frankly, the objectives of those that support you, be it finance or otherwise.
Correct.
Fair statement? So Mohammed, what drives you then? If it's not necessarily just the bottom line or return or the ability to have an exit, what is it that drives you as an innovator? And maybe you can even speak for your colleagues and just provide a brief perspective on that and
What drives me is the lifetime that I have invested in, what I have accomplished, and I have to get this out, and I have to have everyone have this. It's not only for me, and it's so massive it would make a big difference in everyone's
So you
life.
have an urgency. In your case, you can't wait to release your technology, share it with the world in a controlled process, as I understand.
Correct.
Where Daniel has been resistant.
He's already
would
gone
rather
through that pass.
Would rather
The path,
keep it
actually.
inside. So three different individuals, all motivated by the same basic principle.
I think we all agree, all of us, that we want it out, and we want it out for humanity. We want it.
So with all of that heard and understood, we reached out to Graciela, again, you know, an individual that has dedicated her life to the issue that brings all of us together, with a deep understanding of markets, someone that has created the markets.
I just want to say that writing books that you really believe in and really mean something to your life is exactly the same as inventing.
Yes.
It's the exact drive that makes you a little crazy in other people's eyes.
And so, John, I mean, strong statement. When we reached out to Graciela last night and said, listen, we have three innovators, based on what they're telling us, what we've researched, isn't there a way to bring all of that together for a much larger outcome and solution, actually technology solution? And Graciela actually recognized that there was, and recognized that her own invention that she and her partner have worked on, that is ready to launch, has a play in it. And so Graciela actually offered to serve as the first mentor, I want to say, you know, well, the first mentor and advisor, and help in establishing the boards that hopefully many of you will join. Graciela, until we get to John and the manifesto that you described, can you put into perspective what these three technologies, solutions, will imply in the context of what you have established at SRI, Stanford Research Institute, and how within a year's time frame this may lead to something that will be recognized beyond this room or even the borders of this community?
I hesitate to take time away from John because I know what he's going to say is very exciting, but I will do that. As we offer to this group the platform of the technology that we develop, it's operating in the Stanford Research Institute, 333 Ravenswood, which is the biggest technology development campus in Silicon Valley, around the corner from Google, where the internet was created. We have a plant which is about 35 feet high, 15 feet wide, 10 feet deep, and that tower is next to the power plant at the Stanford Research Institute, and is linked to it, is integrated, and is taking away all the CO2 that the power plant, which is a natural gas plant, is producing, and with the excess heat is taking more CO2 from air. So the two plants put together, the SRI power plant and the global thermostat carbon capture plant, taking carbon from air and from the power plant, the combination is carbon negative, which is what the IPCC has said this year for the first time, 2014, in the 5-year report, is needed, necessary for the climate change problem. It's no longer the case of becoming more efficient on energy use, which is very important.
So if we now look at...
It's carbon negative technology. In that context, the invention that Daniel has described and Chris has described fit perfectly by replacing or improving by a factor of 2 and maybe more the provision of the power plant for our energy needs, which are mostly in terms of heat, but there is some electricity needed. And they will replace, or they will greatly magnify the ability of that power plant to produce that, number one. And number two, assuming that everything works well with Mohammed's formula, link his hydrogen from water and our CO2 from air and create synthetic fuels that, as explained by General Clark, are strategically extremely important for national security purposes, because then you can produce gasoline from water and air anywhere. You don't need to have an oil well or anything like that. So this would be offering our platform that today, for the first time I can announce, but I can't tell you the name, has now its first funded commercial plant is now put in place with a very major strategic power plant provided in the United States. So we're putting that platform to use so those new innovations can come in and augment. Not only we can capture CO2 now, carbon negative way, but we can use it to produce synthetic fuels. Not only we can take the energy and the CO2 from that power plant, but we can magnify it and improve that by using Chris and Daniel's technologies, which will improve the efficiency by a factor of 2 in the process of capturing CO2 and converting it into synthetic fuels, which are molecule by molecule identical to gasoline.
So this is a real opportunity for thought leaders, institutions to potentially get engaged in a very entrepreneurial venture, and venture in the sense that it is an open innovation venture. John volunteered to create a manifesto. So it's not...
I'd like to say that this is very, can I just say something? This is very deja vu because at the University of California, Santa Barbara, two Nobel laureates and I did a movie called Power of the Sun. We showed it to an audience like this, and it inspired several departments at the university to begin to realize on the buildings at the university exactly what we showed in the movie, and will be in December cutting ribbon for the biggest photovoltaic array on the campus. That's a direct result of the movie, and so this is how a process like this happens.
Yeah, that's truly inspiring, and I think what you're describing is a living lab, and creating living labs, whether it's in a municipal environment, academic environment, is tremendously important, where again, Formula E is a living lab in 10 cities and growing. John, the manifesto that you will draft and we will, through AREDAY, share with all of you, is really the first attempt to get our arms around this shared vision and hopefully this shared approach. As we all hope you will become involved, it's really your work, your perspective on the process, and we need to establish a process that is measurable, because even if success as we establish it is not achieved, there are lessons learned in that, and I think as a community we want to look back in a year from now to understand where we fell short, or if there's interest, if there was another experiment, another initiative, that there are lessons learned. But absolutely invite everyone to participate to the level that you're interested. This is by no means exclusive, but specifically a request to become involved. And the leadership that you can bring is much required, quite frankly.
Well, also I'd like to say that in the UCSB experience, we learned lots of lessons. It wasn't just a seamless process. We learned all the stumbling blocks of the bureaucracies on the campus, all the solar phobia and the comments that, and this might make you laugh, the biggest criticism of our work was that they said it would be great to do photovoltaics, but Santa Barbara does not have sufficient sunlight. And so I looked it up. I mean, these are the kind of negative stumbling blocks you get. So I looked it up and saw that of all the 50 leading universities in the United States, Santa Barbara was number 3 in solar resource. And so that's one of the parts of this program, is to learn what are the stumbling blocks and how to get around them.
Absolutely. So it's not necessarily a think tank, but a do tank. And we only have 10 minutes, so I wanted to open this up for questions and hopefully answers.
As an inventor, I, like my colleagues at AREI, get sent a whole bunch of stuff to evaluate, and we're not really set up to do that. Some of them violate physical law and so on, but there are some very interesting things emerging in synthetic fuels that go back to the fundamentals of physical chemistry, stuff that was done in the 1850s that we're rediscovering, a reaction worked out by Chaim Weizmann, who founded the State of Israel and was a very good chemist. Willie Smits has even figured out and measured that Orangupanada, the sugar palm in Borneo, is about 6 to 12 times as productive as sugar cane, which was, we all learned in high school, is the most productive plant net primary productivity. It's wrong by an order of magnitude. So it's worth re-examining stuff as long as we take physical law seriously. I just wanted to add to General Clark's earlier comment about military purchases of biofuels that I know the prices of what the Navy is getting delivery of this year and next year, and United Airlines has also said the same thing, that the prices are now competitive in those imminent deliveries with the fossil fueled equivalents, and it's a complete drop-in replacement. You can mix the fuels in any proportion. The engine doesn't mind. Everything's certified. So those early purchases of expensive bench fuel stuff basically took 10 years off the development process by letting the developers get the capital to go to scale to get the price down, and that is encouraging for any kind of innovation that will make sense and make money at scale.
And with the experience of your own organization, the Rocky Mountain Institute, and 30 years, congratulations, of experience, or NASA, I mean, there's so much wisdom and there's so many resources that we can leverage, and with we, it's really the community, to evaluate very quickly whether something is viable, and from a perspective that isn't commercial but is viable or not, or if there are other solutions that could be introduced to make it viable. And therein we see the promise. So really a different motivation. Another question.
I wanted to follow Amory. He and I have been on this as long as anybody on earth, I think. I actually did the financial plan for the U.S. Senate for the Synfuels Corp in 1980. And it was done over the August recess. We had 35 days to do it. Senator Muskie ordered it because he thought everybody in energy was a liar, and he wanted to pay somebody to come up with this answer because of an $80 billion proposal, which would be $250 billion today. So he hired Booz Allen. I was a Booz Allen. And he paid us $22,500. He told us how much he was paying us. I was the project manager, and internally we had a $200,000 budget that I could spend considering the importance of it. So kudos to the firm. I'm not sure we ever were paid that $22,500. Because it turns out that, and they actually asked me, where do you send an invoice to the U.S. Senate? So anyway, I don't think we got paid. But we did a great job, and we put all the partners in the firm on the telephone during August to call all the CEOs and the CFOs of all the energy companies in the country. We really did a good study. And it really came down to, do you want to give a loan guarantee or a price guarantee? You got your choice. With a loan guarantee, you're guaranteeing the technology. You're guaranteeing everything. You're guaranteeing management competence. It's everything. It's all in. With a price guarantee, you're guaranteeing the spread between whatever your feedstock is, oil, gas, coal, or biofuels, and whatever your output is, liquid or gaseous fuels. And in a world where we have market-based pricing established by geopolitical forces, and you did 20-year debt financing to do these projects, you cannot get that debt other than by government guarantee.
And as you shared with us yesterday,
so I just want to put that forward.
Your perspective is, I mean, exactly the perspective and the wisdom that we require, you and your colleagues say in finance. As you shared with us yesterday, I mean, if we or any of the innovators were to seek financing without an ability to show track record, or even if there was a project that is commercialized, you don't have the ability to accept unlimited liability, say, when you go into a community for an installation. So there are certain algorithms that need to be understood or created that probably reside within this audience, or we need to source in order to get there. So again, thanks for your leadership. As we only have 5 minutes, I actually would like to have my manager and boss, who drew me away from Siemens, I really have to say, because of the vision and everything that is communicated here, to become involved, and maybe just share a few closing comments and your commitment, our commitment to enabling all of this and supporting Chip and Sally for future years to come.
I think in a nutshell what everybody's trying to say here is that there are a lot of technology these gentlemen have. Unfortunately, it's very difficult to go from that stage that they've proven it themselves to take it into the market, because there are market forces that don't want those technologies out. Because if I am GE and I spent $4 billion on a new type of technology, and here comes along Chris with the solar technology that breaks that in half, then they are not going to be willing to be partners of ours, or they would like to buy us, shelve us for 10 years, and then get it out. What we want to do is somehow create a platform where we bridge those technologies into a marketplace above and beyond those multinationals that have vested interest in those technologies, to help speed up innovation in the sector, especially in renewable energy. So I think the combination of each one of these individuals, they have some very breakthrough technologies. I've seen it personally, including Graciella's. And hopefully we can find a way and a mechanism to push those forward as a group, and with AREDAY support onto this.
Thank you.
From
Final words?
Historical experience, we shouldn't be that negative on the large companies, because, for example, the first terrestrial photovoltaic company was a vision of Elliott Berman, and the only company that shared his vision was actually Exxon, and Exxon financed the first terrestrial photovoltaic company to lay the flag of terrestrial photovoltaics throughout the world in the early 1970s.
I think your words resonate. I mean, this is not us against multinationals. There's so much innovation that is driven through corporate innovation labs and tremendous resources. But I do think we need to analyze who is truly dedicated to our mission, who is putting long-term resources towards that mission, and whether it's the right fit. So, but I think very clearly stated, multinationals ultimately have to be our partners in the process.
I think that the great value of the American system is its openness. Openness to change, openness to participation, openness to new ideas, openness to innovation, openness to failing, which is very important in order to succeed. You can't succeed if you're not willing to fail. In this context, I think I want to invite everybody in this audience to join the effort that we are trying to put together here. That Robert Labia will be very, very pleased to receive any suggestion. But within all that, we have here the granddaddy of them all. We have Emory Lovins. And he was kind enough to talk with us and to tell us about his input. And I think I will just stick my leg out and say, we want to have you as our advisor, if you're willing to do so.
So, thank you everyone for considering this. Certainly, we look forward to having dialogues with all of you. We hope that we provided a perspective that was somewhat unique and different. And hopefully in a year from now, we'll be on stage with you to report back to our results and hopefully success. Thank you.